My name is Stephen Mitchell and I'm 52 years old. I've been working as a construction foreman in Phoenix, Arizona for the past 28 years. It's honest work that's allowed me to build a decent life, own a modest 3-bedroom house in Glendale, and maintain a credit score I've always been proud of. I never imagined that the woman I'd been married to for 15 years would use that very credit score to destroy my life. My wife Rebecca and I met in 2009 at a community barbecue in our neighborhood. She was 31 at the time, recently divorced, and had moved to Arizona from Ohio with her 8-year-old daughter Emma from her previous marriage. Rebecca was beautiful in that effortless way some women have, blonde hair that always looked perfect, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could light up a room. She worked as a receptionist at a dental office and seemed like the kind of stable, down-to-earth woman I'd been looking for. Our courtship was traditional and comfortable. We'd go to dinner at chain restaurants, watch movies at the local AMC, and spend weekends doing yard work or taking Emma to soccer games. I grew to love Emma like my own daughter, and she seemed to accept me as a father figure. Rebecca and I married in a small ceremony at a local chapel in 2010, with just close friends and family present. For the first several years, our marriage seemed solid. Rebecca was a good homemaker, kept our house clean and organized, and was actively involved in Emma's school activities. I provided steady income from my construction job, and together we lived within our means. We took modest vacations to places like Sedona or the Grand Canyon, ate out once or twice a week, and gradually paid down the mortgage on our house. Rebecca had always been interested in what she called side hustles. Over the years, she'd tried selling jewelry through home parties, marketing essential oils, and promoting various multi-level marketing schemes to our friends and neighbors. None of these ventures ever made significant money, but they never lost much either. So I didn't discourage her entrepreneurial spirit. I figured it gave her something to focus on besides housework. Around 2018, Rebecca became increasingly secretive about her activities. She'd spend hours on her laptop, always closing it quickly when I walked into the room. She started receiving mail addressed to various business names I didn't recognize. When I asked about it, she'd say she was exploring opportunities or building her network. She also began traveling more frequently, taking weekend trips to Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and even as far as Denver, claiming they were for business conferences or training seminars. I trusted my wife completely, so these changes didn't immediately alarm me. Rebecca had always been more social and outgoing than me, and I assumed her increased activity was just part of her personality. She still maintained our household, still showed up to Emma's school events, and still seemed committed to our marriage. Emma was now a teenager and naturally spending more time with friends, so Rebecca, having her own interests, seemed natural. The first real warning sign came in early 2023. I was reviewing our joint bank statements, something I did monthly to track our expenses, when I noticed several large cash withdrawals that I couldn't account for. Over the course of 3 months, Rebecca had withdrawn nearly $8,000 in increments of $500 to $1,000. When I asked her about it, she explained that she was investing in a new business opportunity that required cash payments. "What kind of business requires cash payments?" I asked her over dinner one evening. "It's an import-export thing," she said vaguely. "The suppliers prefer cash because it's faster than checks or wire transfers." "Import-export of what?" "Jewelry, decorative items, stuff like that. Stephen, you know I've always been good at spotting trends. This could really take off." I wasn't entirely satisfied with her explanation, but Rebecca had always been somewhat impulsive with money, and $8,000, while significant, wasn't going to bankrupt us. I decided to keep a closer eye on our finances, but didn't push the issue further. Over the next few months, Rebecca's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd be gone for days at a time, claiming she was attending trade shows or meeting with suppliers. She bought a new wardrobe of expensive clothes, saying she needed to look professional for her business meetings. She also started wearing jewelry I'd never seen before, expensive-looking pieces that she claimed were samples from her suppliers. Emma, now 19 and attending community college, mentioned to me that her mother had been asking strange questions about our family finances. "She wanted to know about your social security number and when you opened your bank accounts," Emma told me one evening when Rebecca was out of town. I thought it was weird. That conversation made me uncomfortable, but I still didn't suspect the depth of Rebecca's deception. I assumed she might be trying to set up joint business accounts or something similar. I made a mental note to ask her about it when she returned from her trip. The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in October 2023. I was getting ready for work, drinking coffee in my kitchen, when my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. "Is this Stephen Mitchell?" a professional-sounding woman asked. "Yes, this is Stephen." "Mr. Mitchell, this is Jennifer Rodriguez from First Phoenix Bank. I'm calling to confirm some information about a loan application we received yesterday." I felt my stomach drop. "I'm sorry, what loan application?" "Sir, we have an application for a personal loan in the amount of $65,000. The application was submitted online yesterday evening and lists you as the primary borrower." I didn't apply for any loan. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you some security questions to verify your identity, and then I think we need to discuss this situation in detail." After confirming my social security number, address, and other personal information, Jennifer explained that someone had submitted a loan application using my name, social security number, date of birth, and employment information. The application requested $65,000 as a personal loan, with the money to be deposited into a bank account I'd never heard of. "The good news," Jennifer said, "is that our fraud detection system flagged the application because the requested deposit account doesn't match any of your existing accounts in our system. That's why I'm calling to verify before we process anything." "Thank God for that," I said, my mind racing. Someone is obviously trying to steal my identity. "Mr. Mitchell, I need to ask you a difficult question. Do you have any family members or close associates who would have access to all of this personal information?" The implication hit me like a sledgehammer. The only person who had access to all my personal information was Rebecca. "My wife," I said quietly. "Sir, I think you need to come into the branch as soon as possible. We need to document this attempted fraud and take steps to protect your credit." I called in sick to work and drove immediately to the bank. Jennifer Rodriguez was a middle-aged Hispanic woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She showed me the loan application, and my blood ran cold. Every piece of information was correct: my full name, social security number, date of birth, mother's maiden name, employment history, and even details about my bank accounts that only Rebecca would know. "Mrs. Mitchell would have had to answer security questions to submit this application," Jennifer explained. "She knew your first pet's name, the street you grew up on, and your high school mascot." "She's lived with me for 15 years, I said numbly. "She knows everything about me." Jennifer helped me place fraud alerts on all my credit reports and file a police report. She also provided me with copies of the loan application and all related documentation. As I looked through the papers, I realized that Rebecca had been planning this for months, possibly years. She had systematically gathered every piece of information she would need to impersonate me financially. When I got home that evening, Rebecca's car wasn't in the driveway. That wasn't unusual. She'd been traveling frequently, but given the day's events, her absence felt ominous. I called her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent several text messages, but received no response. Emma came home from her college classes around 6 o'clock. She immediately noticed that I was upset. "Dad, what's wrong? You look terrible." I sat her down and explained what had happened at the bank. Emma's face went white. "Mom tried to steal money using your name." "It looks that way." "Emma, has your mother said anything to you about needing money or having financial problems?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "About a month ago, she asked me if I thought you would co-sign a loan for her business. I told her I didn't know, but that she should just ask you directly. She never asked me about any loan." "Dad, there's something else. Last week I came home early from school and found Mum going through your desk in the Home Office. She said she was looking for insurance papers, but she seemed really nervous when I caught her. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was devastating. Rebecca had been systematically gathering my personal information, not for identity theft by a stranger, but for identity theft by my own wife. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept calling Rebecca's phone, but it continued going straight to voicemail. Around 2 in the morning, I decided to check our joint bank accounts online. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Over the past week, while I'd been working and Emma had been at school, Rebecca had systematically drained our joint checking and savings accounts. She'd made multiple large withdrawals and transfers, leaving a combined total of less than $300 in accounts that had contained over $22,000 the previous Monday. I also discovered that Rebecca had opened several credit cards in both our names over the past 6 months, cards I'd never seen or known about. She'd maxed out most of them, accumulating nearly $30,000 in debt. The monthly statements had been mailed to a P.O. box I didn't know existed. By morning, I realized that Rebecca had vanished with over $50,000 of our money and had attempted to steal $65,000 more through the fraudulent loan. If the bank's fraud detection system hadn't caught the loan application, she would have successfully stolen more than $100,000 from me. I called the police to file an additional report about the missing money from our joint accounts. Detective Maria Santos, a veteran fraud investigator, explained that cases like mine were becoming increasingly common. Spousal financial fraud is one of the most devastating forms of identity theft, she told me in her office at the Phoenix Police Department. The perpetrator has complete access to all the victim's personal information, and they often spend months or years planning their crime. Can you track her down? We'll try, but these cases are challenging. If she's smart, she's already moved the money offshore or converted it to untraceable assets. The fact that she planned this so carefully suggests she's not going to be easy to find. Detective Santos helped me understand the legal implications of my situation. While Rebecca's actions were clearly criminal, proving them in court would be complicated by the fact that we were married and had joint accounts. The credit card debt she'd accumulated in both our names would likely be my responsibility, regardless of whether she was ever prosecuted. Emma was devastated by her mother's betrayal. "I can't believe she would do this to you," she said through tears. "You've been nothing but good to us for 15 years. Emma, this isn't your fault, and you shouldn't feel responsible for your mother's choices. But I feel like I should have seen the signs. All those weird questions she was asking, the secretive behavior, the traveling, I should have seen the signs too. We were both manipulated by someone we trusted." Over the next few weeks, I worked with my bank and credit card companies to document the extent of Rebecca's fraud. The total damage was staggering. She had stolen $53,000 from our joint accounts, accumulated $32,000 in credit card debt in our names, and attempted to fraudulently obtain an additional $65,000 through the personal loan. I hired a divorce attorney, Michael Chen, who specialized in cases involving financial fraud. He explained that even though Rebecca had committed crimes, the civil aspects of our divorce would be complicated. "The good news is that you can prove she committed fraud, which will work in your favor during property division," Michael explained. "The bad news is that you're still legally responsible for debts she incurred during the marriage, even if you didn't know about them. So I have to pay back money she stole from me?" "Not exactly. The court will consider her fraudulent behavior when dividing assets and debts. But the credit card companies don't care about your marital problems. They'll expect payment regardless." The divorce proceedings took 8 months. During that time, I had to continue making minimum payments on credit cards I'd never used while living on a drastically reduced income. I'd lost my life savings. My credit was damaged by missed payments on debts I didn't know existed, and I was facing the prospect of bankruptcy. Emma, meanwhile, was dealing with her own emotional trauma. Her mother had abandoned her just as completely as she'd abandoned me. Rebecca made no attempt to contact Emma, provide explanations, or maintain any relationship with her daughter. "It's like she just erased us from her life," Emma said during one of our many conversations about the situation. 15 years meant nothing to her. "Emma, some people are capable of compartmentalizing their emotions in ways that seem impossible to understand. Your mother may have convinced herself that what she was doing was justified somehow. How could stealing from your own family ever be justified?" I didn't have an answer for that question. The breakthrough in the case came 11 months after Rebecca disappeared. Detective Santos called me on a Thursday morning with news. "Stephen, we found your wife. She's been arrested in Costa Rica on immigration charges." "Costa Rica?" Apparently, she's been living there since she left Phoenix. The Costa Rican authorities arrested her for overstaying her tourist visa, and when they ran her fingerprints, our fraud warrant came up in the system. What happens now? That depends on whether Costa Rica agrees to extradite her. They don't have an extradition treaty with the United States, so she could potentially stay there and serve time for immigration violations instead of coming back to face fraud charges here. The legal complexities of international fugitive cases were beyond my understanding, but Michael Chen explained that there was a good chance Rebecca would never return to the United States to face justice for her crimes. The cost of fighting extradition from a non-treaty country often exceeds the value of the fraud, he explained. The district attorney's office has to decide whether it's worth the expense and diplomatic effort. 3 months later, I received word that Costa Rica had denied the extradition request. Rebecca would serve 6 months in a Costa Rican jail for immigration violations and then presumably be deported, but not to the United States. She was a dual citizen through her grandmother and would likely be sent to Ireland where she could legally reside. The divorce was finalized in absentia. Because Rebecca had committed documented fraud and had abandoned the marriage, I was awarded the house and most of our remaining assets. However, our remaining assets were minimal, and I was still responsible for a significant portion of the debt she'd accumulated. I spent the next 2 years rebuilding my financial life. I had to take out a second mortgage on our house to pay off the fraudulent credit card debt. My credit score, which had been over 750 before Rebecca's crimes, dropped to below 500. I couldn't qualify for new credit, had difficulty renting equipment for work, and even had problems getting utilities connected when I briefly considered moving to a smaller house. Emma graduated from community college and transferred to Arizona State University. Despite everything that had happened, she maintained her grades and her determination to build a successful life. I was proud of her resilience and strength. Dad, I know this has been horrible for you, but I want you to know that having you as a father has been the best thing in my life, she told me during her graduation party. Mom may have given birth to me, but you're the one who raised me. Those words meant more to me than she could ever know. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected phone call from Detective Santos. Stephen, I thought you'd want to know. Rebecca was arrested again, this time in Dublin. For what? Marriage fraud. Apparently, she married an Irish businessman and used the same tactics she used on you. She cleaned out his bank accounts and disappeared with about 200,000 euros. So this is a pattern. It looks that way. The Irish authorities are investigating whether she's done this to other men as well. They think she may be part of an organized marriage fraud ring. The news that Rebecca was a professional criminal was both shocking and, in a strange way, relieving. It meant that I hadn't been uniquely foolish or blind. Rebecca was an experienced predator who had specifically targeted men like me, stable, trusting, financially responsible men who would make good victims. Will she ever face justice for what she did to me? Probably not in the United States, but it sounds like she's finally made enemies of people with resources to pursue her internationally. Today, 4 years after Rebecca vanished from my life, I'm still dealing with the financial consequences of her fraud. My credit has improved to the point where I can qualify for basic loans and credit cards, but I'll never fully recover the money she stole. The house that Rebecca and I bought together is now mortgaged for more than it's worth, and I'll probably be paying for her crimes until I retire. But I've also learned valuable lessons about trust, red flags, and protecting myself financially. I keep close track of my credit reports. I never share personal information unnecessarily, and I'm much more cautious about combining finances with anyone. Emma graduated from ASU with a degree in criminal justice. She says her experience with her mother's fraud inspired her to help other victims of financial crimes. She's now working as a victim advocate with the Phoenix Police Department, helping people navigate the same system that helped us during our darkest time. Dad, do you ever wonder what would have happened if the bank hadn't called you that day? Emma asked me recently. Every day. If Jennifer Rodriguez hadn't been doing her job, Rebecca would have gotten away with over $100,000 instead of just $53,000. Do you think she would have kept stealing from you? I think she would have bled me dry and then disappeared anyway. The bank's phone call just accelerated her timeline. I still live in the same house in Glendale. still work in construction, and still deal with the financial impact of Rebecca's betrayal every month when I make payments on debts she created. But I'm no longer the naive, trusting man I was 4 years ago. I've learned that sometimes the people closest to you are capable of the greatest betrayal. The most important lesson I've learned is that financial abuse can happen to anyone, regardless of age, education, or experience. Rebecca spent 15 years earning my trust specifically so she could exploit it. She was patient, calculating, and ruthless in a way that seemed completely inconsistent with the woman I thought I knew. If there's any silver lining to this story, it's that the bank's fraud detection system worked exactly as it should have. One phone call from a vigilant employee saved me from losing an additional $65,000 and possibly prevented Rebecca from destroying my life completely. I still get angry sometimes, thinking about the 15 years I invested in a relationship with a woman who was apparently planning to rob me from the very beginning. But I try to focus on the positive aspects of my life now. My relationship with Emma, my stable job, my slowly improving finances, and the hard-won wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal. Rebecca Mitchell, or whatever name she's using now, is still out there somewhere, probably targeting another trusting man who believes he's found love with a charming, beautiful woman. I hope the Irish authorities catch her, and I hope her victims find some measure of justice, but I can't spend my life waiting for that justice or dwelling on the past. I'm 56 years old now, and I have maybe 10 more years before I can think about retirement. Thanks to Rebecca's fraud, I'll probably have to work longer than I'd planned, and I'll never have the comfortable retirement I'd been saving toward. But I'm alive, I'm healthy, I have a wonderful daughter who loves me, and I have the satisfaction of knowing that I survived one of the worst betrayals imaginable. Sometimes that's enough.